high school student, would it not be nice to wake up Monday morning at 7:30, there's the clock over there, that's at 7:30, and realize there's still plenty of time to get to school? Do you remember in high school waking up at the crack of dawn and wishing you could hit the snooze button a couple of times? I'm sure many of you felt like these two people in this picture when they couldn't hit the snooze button. I believe a later starting time for high school students would be beneficial. According to Kyla Wallstorm in the year 2012, the National Sleep Foundation states teenagers ages 13 to 19 have a natural sleep pattern that leads to a late-to-bed, late-to-rise cycle. Early school start times interrupt this natural sleep pattern, leaving many high school students sleep-deprived. The average high school student needs 9 hours and 15 minutes of sleep every night. Later start times will benefit the students academically, physically, and mentally. I will demonstrate exactly how lack of sleep will affect students in these three areas. Now I will establish the need for these changes. There are studies that document the need for more sleep for teenagers. According to QResearch.com, the definition of sleep deprivation is not getting enough sleep. Sleep deprivation can negatively affect the student's academics. Some of the effects are impaired memory, reduced ability to complete tasks, reduced time spent on tasks, and poor academic performance. According to Education Next, in the year 2012, school begins too early. There was a study in the Wake County school systems that documented the positive effects of later starting times. Among these students, there was a 2% increase in math studies and a 1% increase in reading. These studies, according to Kyla Wallstorm, improved attendance, enrollment rates, grades increased, and there was less sleeping in class. Also, according to the American Academy of Sleep Medicine, in the year 2009, higher math scores were related to greater sleep. Here's the two graphs showing the math scores. Also, higher English and history scores were related to increased sleep, and there was less difficulties in waking up in the morning. Next, I will be talking about the physical aspects from lack of sleep. According to the Mayo Clinic, everyone has an internal clock. The biological and the physiological process that follows this 24-hour clock is called the circadian rhythm. In young children, they naturally fall asleep between 8 and 9 p.m. During puberty, the teen's internal clock changes. They're not tired until 11 o'clock p.m. Since the proper amount of sleep is 9 hours, there's no way they are getting enough sleep given their schedule and the early start times for schools. A study published in the Journal of School Health, 90% of teens stated they never get their 9 hours and 10% admitted to getting less than 6 hours. Some of the medical and physical problems due to the lack of sleep for teenagers are sleep apnea, obesity, GERD, restless leg syndrome, high blood pressure, and lastly, ADHD. Now I will be discussing a fourth reason why a later start time will be beneficial for teens. I will discuss how this impacts the mental health of the teen. According to Examiner.com in the year 2012, adolescents going to bed after midnight had a 24% increase incidence of depression and a 20% increase in suicidal thoughts. Another problem linked to sleep deprivation in teens is substance abuse. The lack of sleep also causes mood and behavioral problems such as anxiety and irritability. This was stated in the article Pros and Cons of School Starting Later for Teens. As reported in Sleep 2010, a study between two cities in Virginia had shown that there was a 40% higher car crash rate where the schools had an early start time for all teenagers. Now I will be discussing how to satisfy the need. Starting later for high school students will improve on these problems. As a parent, make sure your teen gets the proper amount of sleep. Some suggestions are having them get a part-time job instead of a full-time job, limit their sports activities to maybe 1 or 2 instead of 3 or 4, and make sure that they get 3 well-balanced meals a day. Some suggestions for the schools would be having no homeroom, study hall for everyone, less homework, and even class time to do some of the homework. These will then allow the students some time to fit everything in their schedule, including more sleep. Next, I will be discussing some of the benefits of increased sleep due to the later start times. According to the article, teens more alert when school starts later in 2010. By changing the school start time by 30 minutes, there was much improvement noted. Some examples are the percent of students getting less than 7 hours of sleep per night dropped by 79%. Students who reported at least 8 hours of sleep a night increased by 55%. Also, students who felt somewhat unhappy or depressed dropped from 65% to 45%. Students who felt irritated or annoyed dropped from 84% to now 62%. And finally, students who felt fatigue decreased from 15% to 4%. In another article titled, Later High School Start Times Improve Student Learning and Health Documented Benefits, there was a study which was called the School Start Time Study. This took place in Minneapolis. Some of the benefits were less sleeping in class, students reported depression, and fewer students visiting counselors for behavioral issues. Since this study, there have been more than 250 schools throughout the country that have switched to later school start times. In conclusion, I have included the need for high school students to start later. I have provided solutions and given the benefits to these solutions. I'm sure all of you can see the benefits for high school starting later. Now I will give you some information on how you, the audience, can solve this problem. You have heard the negatives from sleep deprivation to teenagers. Why would you put your teenagers at risk? You have heard about the benefits. Do you not want this for all teenagers? As students, talk to your parents, family members, and teachers, and encourage them to go to the school board. Investigate for yourself. 5. Looking into the studies that were already done. You can also get more facts from other schools that have already done this. Also, you can write to the Congress concerning this problem. The Secretary of Education, Arne Duncan, agrees that schools should be starting later, but he also says all this has to start at the local level. According to the article, Success Stories Start School Later, there are now 33 states that have already adopted the later start times for high schools. I am sure hearing all of the above information, you can see the benefits for the students physically, academically, and mentally. Finally, as my poster board says, sleep in later and your grades will be greater. Thank you so much for listening.